Hi, welcome to Create with Chris today. This is Chris Haughey coming to you live from Cupboard Distributing in Urbana, Ohio. Today we are going to be talking about the magic of modeling paste. It's kind of a quiet medium that's not often used, but it is amazing. And so I wanted to share with you some of the fun things that you can do with this unique medium to really enhance and create some very, very impressive facts. But before we get started, I have a couple things I want to share with you. For those of you that are not familiar, I'm Chris Haughey. I'm the owner and founder of Cupboard Distributing, CD Stencils, and Pixelated Palette e-zine. And this is my latest ornament from my design club, which is sent out 6 times a year. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. And I thought it turned out just adorable. For those of you that are a member, it was sent out last week. And
stay safe, Linda. They have a tornado warning.
oh my goodness.
Sorry.
Maybe take your phone under the table.
Oh.
But the design club is sent out every other month for those in the States. If you're out of the country, we do offer digital as well as paper. And if you're paper, then it goes out 3 times or 2 times a year. Lindsay's over here. She's monitoring everything and keeping all the facts correct.
Was that for Canada?
For Canada.
For Canada, it's twice a year.
Okay, twice a year. So that's May, I think, and November. But keep an eye out for your ornament if you are in the club. These are exclusive for members only. Next week on Wednesday, I am teaching. Let me go into, zoom in a little bit more so you get a full picture. This is my flower market cart, and I'm teaching that next Wednesday live here at Cupboard Distributing. There we go. And this has a ton of technique in it. I just love doing unusual things, and this one is really loaded with a lot of very impressive and easy and fun, quick little tips, tricks, and techniques. I always have a lot of those to share. So this is going to be a great class. Not only will you learn how to do all of this, but there's a lot of techniques that you can incorporate into other areas of your painting world as well. Okay, Create with Chris. I've been kind of on a sabbatical. Hubby's been going through some stuff, so I think we've got him straightened around. So I'm excited to get back in the saddle, and you'll probably be seeing and hearing from me a good bit more. Next week on Create with Chris, I started a series of these little rectangle plaques. Just really thought it would be fun to do a quick project that incorporates, again, a lot of unusual technique. And I think it's fun to do things and after you do them, you go, wow, that was really easy, and wow, that was really impressive. So that's kind of what I'm going for. So I'm going to do a series of 3. So there'll be 3 total. This one is going to be, it's pre-recorded, but I'm going to release it and upload it next Tuesday in lieu of being live. So next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, we're going to post the link for this, and you can go online and view it at your pleasure, your leisure. And I think you're going to have fun with this one. I really enjoyed painting it. So there will be a series of 3. I've got the chickadee birdhouse is the first one. I'm doing a beehive now, and then a dragonfly is going to be the 3rd one. Okay, then I think this is just a show and tell. I just created this plaque, spring nesting, brand new pattern, just released it, I think, last week, Lindsay. And it uses a lot of, again, I really love background technique. And this one is just packed full, how to use a stencil to create a lot of impressive designs. So check that one out as well. All right, modeling paste. This is such a great, I'm going to go right to the screen. This is such a great medium. And I don't know how many of you use it, but I sure hope you'll watch this and pick up some ideas. And I think the more you use it, you'll find out how easy it is to work with and how versatile it is. Not only for just creating depth, but I'll show you some of the different things I've done with it. Okay, so modeling paste, what is it? This is a very thick medium. It has the consistency of what maybe like a drywall paste. It's like thick glue. It's a little thicker than whipped cream and pudding. So you can really mold it. It's pretty much freestanding. You can't sculpt with it, but you can mold it and move it around. Because it's thicker, it does take a little bit longer to dry, so if you're not a patient person, you're going to have to learn to be, because you cannot speed this up. You can use a heat tool with it or a drying implement to make it dry just a little bit faster, but remember it's thick, so if you dry the outer skin, inside's still going to be soft, so you don't want to lay anything on it. You have to give it a good time to dry. You can thin it with water, but you have to remember, if you do thin it down, you're also thinning down that consistency as well. To apply this, you can use a brush, you can use your fingers, you can use a palette knife, you can use a credit card, anything that's flexible. And if you do go with a palette knife, I kind of like the angled palette knives, and they come in all different sizes and shapes. The flexible is what you want to look for. So even these little inexpensive palette knives are just fantastic because they give you that movement that you need when spreading and applying this texture paste or modeling paste. You can mix it with paint, but you do need to remember it's white. So if you mix it with paste or with paint, let me just show you here. I've got a little bit of, this is teal green. Let me zoom in just a little bit here. Okay. This is teal green. I did not mix that very well. Let me give it another good shake. Okay. Teal green's a nice strong color, but if I mix it with the modeling paste, it's going to become a lighter shade. So you'll get a thinner, lighter shade of that teal. So keep that in mind. If you do mix it with paint, it's going to thin it down just a tad, but it's also going to lighten the color. So if you want a real strong teal green, go ahead and put the paste on. When it dries, you can paint over it, and you're going to maintain that depth without a lot of worry about becoming too light. Okay, let me show you some of the things that I have done with the texture paste, and then I will show you how I do it. You can use it to create some texture, and I grabbed some samples because I thought it would be fun to go over these. Okay. On this one, I've just spread some over a board, and I just take, you can tell I've been out of the saddle for a little while. I'm kind of out of sync. I'm just going to grab a little bit. It doesn't take much, and I'm just going to spread it almost like spreading peanut butter, very thinly. And you can get some really, really nice texture. And I did this on black so you could see the contrast. After it dries, I'll show you some of the samples I've done with it. This is one, and you can see all the depth, very, very low texture. Even though it looks like there's a lot on here, it's, to the touch, it's very minimal. It doesn't take much. Just a little dab's going to give you a great amount of texture. To me, this kind of looks like if you would take a piece of tissue paper and crinkle it and decoupage it onto a surface and then paint over it, you get the same results. Very unique effect. This is another one I did to kind of create that look of old cement. There's hardly any texture on here, but it really is very, very effective. I did this one earlier so I can show you how easily it paints up. And I'm just gonna start with a dark base. And this is soft black. And I'm just gonna paint over it. And you think, gosh, I lose all that texture when you paint over it. I think I'll just do about half of it here. Because I'm working on a textured surface, it takes a little bit to work that paint in there because you're working it down in that, I don't want to say rough areas, but you can see how if I just skim over the top, how it pulls that texture out. Okay, so after we get that first coat on, I'm going to give it a quick dry just to make sure. Because if I put a wet coat over top of that, it's just going to mix in. And there's just, the options and the colors that you can use on this are just absolutely endless. Let me bring a little more light in since we're working with such a dark color. I'm going to go back into that teal green just to start adding color into this. Make sure I get that dark out of my brush. Always work dark to light. Although I've never done the other way around, so it might be another interesting technique. I'm just loading my brush just a little bit. Let me pull this over a tad. Kind of wiping that excess. And I'm just going to lightly pull that brush over. Can you see how that picks it up? Let me zoom in just a little bit more. I'm using the side of my brush. I'm not using the chisel edge. Can you see how that's just starting to evolve? Any of the brush strokes that are coming up are going to be as a result of that texture. You know, there's hardly anything on here, but to look at this, it just really looks like there's a lot going on. This is so minimal that it's very easy to paint over and still get some nice crisp edges. You know how you paint, everything's kind of bumpy and raggedy around the edges? This is very smooth to paint over. Okay, I don't have much on there. I'm going to hit it with a dryer again just to make sure, because we're working kind of fast here. I want to go through this quickly. And I'm going to grab a lighter color. This is Shoreline. I always think I should shake these up before.
Stacy has a question. Is this paste what some people use when they paint on screens? She's seen a product applied to the screen and then the artist painting on top of the product.
You probably could put this on a screen. You would have to have something solid underneath of it when you slide it across so that you fill in those holes and not push it through. But I would not let it dry. You know, remove the backing and let it dry, because it probably would stick to whatever you put under there.
And again, you just got the texture with the palette knife and the modeling paste.
Yeah, all I did was this. Just slide it on, just very, and you can hear it scraping, so it's not a heavy application. Very, very light.
Can the paste be used on canvas?
Yes, you can use it. Anything you can paint on, you can use the paste on. Okay, I'm just going to go over this with a lighter color. My brush is a little wet, but you can see how it's picking up even more the paint's laying on the ridges. And I still have that darkness down below. I just think that's kind of amazing.
So cool.
It is, it truly is, just a really unique technique. So you can see how if you alter your color, if you altered your application of each layer of color, you're going to get a totally, totally different result. And I'll go one more lighter. Actually, you know what? I think I'll go put white on there and you really be able to see the contrast. And if you don't like the way it looks, you can add more texture paste on top of it. So, you know, it's not something that once you put it on, that's it. It's very, very workable. Minimal paint, very, very light touch. You almost get a marbled effect.
So Diane asked, are you using the same brush with the various colors?
I am using the same brush, but you have to make sure that you get as much moisture out as possible, because if your paint is thin, you're just gonna do a solid thing. This is almost, I would call it a dry brush. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, wow. So easy. But you can imagine what kind of a effect you can get using different colors in any background. Tans and browns, you get that earthy, tea bag stain, vintage like old parchment. It's just absolutely beautiful.
If you want concrete look, what colors would you use? So it'd be similar to this one?
Yeah,
right?
concrete colors, I would go with blacks and what's that one gray that Deco Art has that's kind of a, is it graphite that has, it's kind of a, you know, and just build your colors up from that. So start with, you know, the dark soft black, and then a deep gray, and then a lighter gray. I think with concrete, you need to stick with some of those with a little bit of brown in it, kind of enhances
This
that
has brown in
cement
it.
color, yeah. So I got you thinking, that's a good thing.
Sandy says, I bet the sheens and the metallics look beautiful with this
Oh,
technique.
yeah. You know, there are so many different avenues you can go. And like I said, I think the modeling paste is so underrated. It's just kind of a quiet powerhouse of opportunity for painters to create and make really amazing results.
The teal she used was teal green, right?
Teal green, shoreline, and then I was gonna go with blue chiffon and then white, but I cut the blue chiffon out and went right to white. On this one, I just added more base color after the black. I just added more of the blue and then build up from there so that I get a more of a, this is a darker base, this is going to become a lighter base if I go this direction.
Kathy wants to know, she says she is thinking of repainting their bathroom vanity. Would this technique work on that?
Like on the cabinet part, I would do like strips or sections at a time, but I don't see why not. I think that would work.
Patty says, I thought the only thing you could use this for is for stenciling snowflakes.
Au contraire. I'm going to build this up so you can see the difference between a brighter background. And you can see how much brighter this is becoming as opposed to where I kept the background a little bit darker.
Anita wants to know if you could dry brush the paint.
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, there's very little water in her brush.
Yeah, it's just very minimal. There's probably a little more than should be because I'm getting a streak right here.
And then Sandy
But you
wants
can
to
see how much brighter this is. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Sandy wants to know about the word art.
Oh,
Wasn't that a metal piece?
okay, yeah, these are metal pieces, and what I did, I glued them on, and then I put the modeling paste around it so it looked like, you know, at Walmart you get these little upholstery tacks. That's what these are, and I cut the backs off. These are some plastic buttons that I put on there. I just think they look so impressive. These are all plastic buttons. This was a metal, you've seen those metal wings. These have magnets on them so they stick on there. But yeah, these are like the buttons that I decoupaged on there. So I glued them on, and then I just went around it with a little bit of that modeling paste to make it look like they weren't glued on, like maybe they were formed onto the background, and then did the dry brushing around it. It is the coolest technique. Modeling paste is pretty amazing, but these are those metal embossed word banners that they have for scrapbooking, and they were, I think they were kind of like a brass color or silver color. They come in different sheens, a clock face, and some hands. That was one of those little metal keyhole things that you get for treasure boxes. So this is a really great way to add interesting technique very, very easily. The only thing you have to do is remember that you need a little bit of patience and not go too fast, because it takes time, number one, to make sure that the modeling paste dries. Keep everything very, very minimal. You don't need much, and I think, you know, as decorative painters, we like to slather the paint on and slather the product on. Just a wee teeny amount makes a big difference. So just put a small amount on, let it dry well, and then add your layers of paint, and it just kind of, it's like magic. It just evolves right before your eyes.
Georgia wants to know if you have to let this dry overnight.
You know, if you don't put it on thick, you probably don't, but as a safeguard, it probably is not a bad idea. You know, it feels dry to the touch, but you do have some thickness there, so every layer you put on is just a very, very light touch. It should not, but I usually do stuff like this at night, and then I go to bed and finish it the next day.
Can you heat set it? With a heat gun?
You probably can heat dry it to expedite the drying time. You know, just test it. You'll know. Don't do the whole part and then get into a mess. Just, you know, test a little bit of it. If it's working out, then you're good to go.
And then Sharon said before or after you do the base coat. You could do it either way, couldn't you?
The base coat?
Well, I mean, she said before or after, so could you use it before? You could use it either way, like before the base coat or after the base coat?
The base, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would make sure you would seal it first. I was gonna see how long it takes this to dry, but we'll move on. I'll check that in a little bit.
Sandy says, you have my wheels on my bus spinning.
Yay, that's what I want. I want your creative wheels to spin. Okay, some different things you can do with it. All right, let's go back to this one. Alrighty, so I've got the texture paste on here. I'm just gonna spread some on. Just to give you an idea what you can do with it. And I thought, well, why could you not take some aluminum foil, crunch it up, and then just press it on there. You know how you lay saran wrap in paper? Look at that, you can get some really cool texture. So this is going to look more like a rough stucco. Can you see how that would turn out? Just getting texture that way. You can take, do I have my, well, I do not. Oh, I'll grab my handy dandy stencil brush. Okay, I'm going to tap it on. I've got foliage, I've got fur, I've got texture for a little lamb. You know, this is a great way to add dimensional texture. And I think when you paint something and add dimension to it as well, everybody goes, ooh, because they like to feel it, and they're going, ooh, how did you do that? Because it looks dimensional, and then they touch it, and it is. And it's always an impressive factor that, or a wow factor that it's kind of fun. You can stick some into a cake decorating piping tube. You can pipe it on, you can write letters, you can use it to, like you want to ice a cake, like you have a little cupcake and you want to spread some icing on to make it look like it's iced. You can use it to, let me go to a different little board here. I like to, when I'm painting snow, after you get your snow floated on, let's do a little bit on here. It's not going to show up real well on a light colored board, but I can do a little quick one on here. Okay, so I've got some snow. And I just want to have a little float of snow. We're going to kind of add some little mounds of snow through here. And I want to kind of ramp that up a little bit. I can do a couple things. I can just take the modeling paste and I'm going to go down to a smaller palette knife. Palette knives are just like brushes. If you want more control, go to a smaller palette knife. Okay, and I want to just put a little bit of highlight on the top of that. Now, I don't need to bring it all the way down. I just want to add a little bit up at the top, and then I'll just go back and add a little bit more. And that's going to add texture at the top. And I did a couple, I don't know if they're going to show up real well. I added it on this, right around the sidewalk. And I also just took my palette knife and I kind of put layers on the tree, just to give a little bit of dimension. I was trying to figure out how in the world to get the camera to show that dimension. I guess maybe you can see it a little bit. So here's the deal. It's not real thick and heavy. It's just enough. I've got a little bit on the roof. It's just enough to really ramp up that look of piled snow. I've got a little bit on this guy too. Just around the base, around the base of the snowman and on the front of him. I just wanted it to be a stronger, brighter kind of little pile. Yes?
Okay, 2 questions. Georgia said she heard you should keep your jar products stored upside down. Is that true?
You know, and I've even, they do dry out over a period of time. I've even put a piece of saran wrap over the top of the jar and then put the lid on. It just helps to keep it fresh longer.
And then Patty says, could this be used instead of Snow-Tex?
Snow-Tex has a little more texture to it. I think this is a little bit softer to blend out, but it's thick enough that you can get the piles. You can see the piles on this. I was trying to figure out a way to, there we go, maybe, yeah, you can see it there, how I've just piled it up around the packages. Now I don't have a whole lot of snow on here, but I've got a light background, and when I put the snow around the packages, it did not show up. But when I put it around with the modeling paste, it really became very enhanced. Okay, but I will tell you, this dries kind of gray. So usually what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of the modeling paste and I'll just squirt a little bit of white paint in there, and I'll mix it together, and you'll see it brightens it up substantially. So once you mix that white paint in, just remember when you mix the white paint in there, it's going to thin it down a bit. I don't know if this is dry enough to get some, yeah. Can you see where I put that on? It's just a little bit, maybe I've got a light over here, I'm going to bring it in just a little stronger. Where I've added that second layer with the white paint in it, it's just a little bit brighter. And it's going to stand out just a little bit more. Also, after you put it on, if it's not white enough, you can float back over it. But if you want a really strong, bright white, just mix a little bit of white paint in with that modeling paste, and that's going to take care of it. I did use a piping tool to put the little drips on the icicle. Then I added sparkle, crystal glamour dust. And you can add the glamour dust while it's still wet, so you don't have to worry about adding it later on. But this is another way that you can add dimension, is use a piping tool. And I think I just took, you know, heavy paper and made a cone shape and cut a little, is it a parchment paper that you use?
You can do parchment paper. You can also do baggies.
Oh, yeah, cut a little hole in the corner of a baggie. That would work well, too. But remember, you don't need a lot, so, you know, you want your product to not dry out or waste it. Just, you can always add more, but just such a fun way to work with it. Okay, now I've got your wheels turning. We're going to go a different direction. If you want to add design, if you have like a cool stencil, let's go out just a little bit. Okay. I thought this was such a beautiful stencil, so I took and just stenciled it onto a surface. And I thought this would be really, really great to use that same technique with the paint and just paint over it. And you think, oh golly, it disappeared. If you really love it, you could leave it white. Hey, but we like to paint everything, right? So I'm just going to put a little bit of paint on that. And I wanted this to be a little bit brighter. This is Lindsay's very, very favorite color. I thought after I put this on, I should have brought the design all the way to the bottom, but this is for a sample. And grab some of that, make sure it's dry. I'm going with that lighter shoreline. I'm just going to, if I had a dry brush, I could use that, but I'm just going to swish over that. Keep a very light touch. It's not going to go down underneath. It's going to stay on that top edge.
Georgia wants to know, do you have to thin it to pipe it?
I did not. I used it straight out of the jar. I did not have to thin it out. You know, when you play around with product, the more you play with it, the more you begin to understand it and have a feel for it. So, you know, definitely try it and see how it's working for you, and you think, oh, that it doesn't need thinned down, or maybe yes, it does need thinned down. So it depends on the application you're using it for as well.
And this stenciled image, should be noted that it's from our new collage stencil.
This, yeah, this, I don't know what this one's
I
called,
think it's
but
Botanic.
Botanic,
I
yes,
think.
gorgeous. And it really starts to bring out that design. Remember, a little bit of paint. You don't need to add a whole lot to get a really impressive effect on it. I'm just going to go from the other side just to help bring that stencil out. Just remember, don't go straight down or you'll get in that background. And then I think what I want to do, go around those corners, and I'm just gonna, whoops, my brush is too wet. I was gonna shade around those corners because I think that's would be really pretty.
Sandy wants to know if when you use it with a stencil, does it pull up when you take the stencil off?
Okay, I will show you what happens when you use a stencil. Okay, kind of made a mess in the corner, but look at the top. It's just really pretty. Okay, to do a stencil, glad you asked. And I'm going to use the lace because I think this is absolutely gorgeous. When you use a stencil, you just have to remember two things. You can't scooch it around, and you can't overwork or overfill it. So I'm gonna take, I've got a bit of texture paste on my palette knife. You need to really hold it down and start at the top and just spread it over. One, and I'm not doing much more than 3 swipes per area. I'm gonna hold it down and lift it carefully up. Look at that, is that not the most gorgeous, absolutely the most gorgeous design? And the thing is, when you stencil white on a busy background, or a very light color background, sometimes it disappears. By using the modeling paste, what happens is it gives strength and volume to that design. So, okay. I will tell you one thing that you need to do as soon as you get finished with your modeling paste over a stencil. Take time to clean it up, because if that modeling paste dries on that stencil,
She said, oh my.
yeah, oh my, it's an understatement. So yeah, just take a minute to get that heavy texture off, because it will, you know, it will stick and it will fill it in. So where is, okay. This is what I did on this one, because I had light on light, and when I stenciled, see if I can do that on here. I'll do a little bit on this side. I think I can get that in there. Well, we'll do a little bit because we're just playing, so that's okay if it doesn't. And I have another board. Okay, I'm gonna leave that one alone because I know I'll make a mess. All right, so I've got this light color, and I want to stencil white in there. And this is Snow White, and you know the characteristics of Snow White. You need a pretty heavy coat. And with stenciling, it's always best to give 2 coats as opposed to 1 heavy coat. So there's my first coat, and it's not showing up very well at all. So even after I put a second coat on, you just don't have the saturation and the impression. Let's get that on there just right. When it dries, it's just gonna be kind of quiet. Okay, so look at that compared to this. This, and background's a little bit darker, but look how vivid and how strong and how impressive this is compared to this. And this is about as white as you're gonna get. But because this has that thickness and that dimension, it really, really stands out nice and strong. When I did this, let me go in here. See, this texture paste is so versatile. I thought, I wonder if I can shade around it. Sure, why not? And then I thought, well, maybe I could shade over this back edge. Absolutely. So I've shaded around both sides, and it just really helps to pop it out even more. So just because you do this doesn't mean you have to stop there. You can go back and shade and highlight and do whatever you want. If you wanted to, you could let this dry, paint over it, and dry brush it and turn it a totally different look. Modeling paste is just such a versatile medium. I think you can have so much fun with it. Yes?
Patty said you shared it does dry a little gray. On that lace, if you wanted it to be white, could you add white paint or brush over it with white? You could do either, couldn't you?
You could do either. I did, on this one, I did add white paint to it to brighten it up because I wanted it a nice strong effect. So I did brighten it up with white on this plaque. Or you could just wait until it dries and then dry brush it. On this, I sure hope this shows up on the camera. I did this shoe. Oh, it does, look at that. I put a floral stencil down and I stenciled the design on the black part because I thought the shoe was very, very plain. And I wanted all the design up in the shoe part. Go out a little bit. And I didn't want to have this be too busy interfering with the top part. So I put that stencil on there. Look how cool that is. So you can do a quiet design with a stencil and just add, just paint over it and not do anything with it. And I did go in and do a little bit of shading because this design is so minimal and flat. You can still paint and shade over it very, very easily. Yes?
Okay, so Robin is signed up for the flower market cart class, and she says she will need to get the paste, but most likely you'll just go over it in class. They won't, because it's
Right.
the last thing to do.
Yeah, for the class, the paste is the last thing, so we'll talk about it, and I'll probably put it on mine, but it is the last thing to do. So, but look, I kind of went around the leaves. I was thinking I painted some of the leaves on there, but
It looks like that one up
I
by the
I
bead.
did float the bow over the design.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've kind of talked about just adding texture and dry brushing, stenciling with the modeling paste to give design, like the lace. Just putting it on with a palette knife, tapping it for texture, slathering it down, and then imprinting something in it. piling it on for added snow texture. And this is really starting to dry. Look at that. Really starting to show up a little bit better. And probably one of my favorite things to do with it, because when you stencil snowflakes, they almost always disappear. If I add texture paste and use a tiny snowflake and just use the texture paste with a little bit of white paint in it, boy, those snowflakes just really pop and stand out. I usually do this after I've finished and I've varnished, and then I put the texture or modeling paste over a snowflake stencil, and I like to drizzle it with glamour dust just to give those snowflakes that extra. It's always so hard to see sparkle on the camera, but all of these little snowflakes have that sparkle in them. And it's really hard, I don't know about you, but I think it's really hard when you have a tiny little snowflake stencil to go back and add layer after layer after layer, because it has to be perfect. If you don't get it lined up just right, you're gonna get that little double edge. With the texture medium, you're gonna put your snowflake down, you're gonna slide the paste over it, lift it straight up, let it dry, go do something fun, and then come back and do the next one, because you need to make sure every snowflake is dry so that when you put your stencil back down, you're not gonna smear the one before it. And I keep thinking I can do it, and I always get into trouble. But you know, the good thing about it is, if you do have problems, you can just take a damp paper towel and you can just wipe it off if it has not dried. So, all that beautiful lace, if I didn't like the way it looked, or I messed it up and I'm not happy with it, I can just clean it off and start over.
Debbie wants to know if you can show, I guess she says show the product, so can you show the jar?
Okay, modeling paste. And use a flexible, even a credit card works well, but we've got a deal today. Let me see. If you order the texture paste today, you get the palette knives at 25% off, a little pack of 3. These are really nice. And, you know, the plastic knives, everybody thinks, oh, they're cheapy. But, you know, some of our best tools are the inexpensive ones. They last forever. And they're super flexible and clean well. So if you buy the modeling paste, you get, and the knife set, you'll get 25% off the knife set. And you have to use the coupon CREATE 32222.
And I put that information in the chat.
Yeah, so good deal. You get the modeling paste. This is the Deco Art Media line. Great stuff. I love the fact that it's in a jar so you can scoop it out and just get what you need and put the lid back on and keep it from drying out.
Hold on a minute, I just saw a question. Can you go over how texture paste, modeling paste is different than Snowtex?
I believe Snowtex has a little more grit and grain in it. It's not quite as creamy. Maybe that's a good word.
I think that's right, yeah.
A good word to use for it.
And what is the difference between texture paste and modeling paste?
I don't know that there is a difference between texture paste and modeling paste.
I'm pretty sure they just bottle them differently.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Every time I use modeling paste, I call it texture paste, and vice versa. So all I have used is the Deco Art modeling paste. Absolutely love it. So I hope that this has given you a little bit of excitement for something new. If you have a jar of modeling paste, yes.
I'm sorry. Patty wants to know, you don't have to varnish over the modeling paste?
You can varnish over it, yes. The modeling paste, now if you put glamour dust on it, I would say no, because I don't like to varnish over the glamour dust. I think it kind of dulls it down. So I usually do that last after I varnish the whole entire project and then add the modeling paste if you're gonna put sparkles in it. If you're not gonna put sparkles in it, go ahead and varnish over it. I just don't wanna cover up those beautiful little sparkles. So how many of you have a jar of modeling paste in your little stash and you're going, yeah, maybe I need to get that out and play with it, because I think you're gonna be amazed. It's just so easy and workable to get that really impressive, and I think this piece probably shows it really well. On this, where's the witch at? Up there. I wanted to show you this one since I've already talked about it. On this little gal, go in just a little bit more. What I did was, I used a spider web stencil here, and I slathered the, the modeling paste there, and then I just scraped it all around. But look how that looked. Isn't that the coolest thing ever? Oh, this is just that gold braid that you get at the fabric store. And I made sure that I connected it with a little bit of modeling paste so it looked like it was carved in as opposed to just being glued on there. I put a little bit of a spider web over here as well. Just really great, and it's kind of fascinating to watch all that just, as you dry brush over it, just really adds that dimension and depth. So I hope you try it and play with it. And see what you can do with it. I have, where's my piece of paper? If you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer what I can. I made this so that I wouldn't have to remember all this. Alrighty. Don't forget my design club. If you're interested in that, it's www.cdwood.com. My flower market cart is next Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And then next Tuesday, I have these out of order. Next Tuesday on Create with Chris, I'm going to upload a video on how to create this chickadee birdhouse. We do have a bundle online, the board and the pattern, if you want to pick that up. That is available. And I also use it's called a mishmash stencil in the background. Just kind of a fun. The bird is so easy to do, and the gladiolus. So if you've ever painted with me, I like to do things that are not complicated and things that make us look good, because we want to look good without having to work too hard. I think painting should be fun, and let's go to this. Okay, I think painting should be fun, and I think that's what we do for our relaxation. And yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So this video will be available on our YouTube channel tomorrow.
Yeah, this one today? Or
Oh,
what?
well, by tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
We've been having some uploading
Yeah,
issues because of the weather.
Yeah, it's rainy here in Ohio again, but
And I'll put the link in the comments. But we have a lot of informative videos and past Create with Chris lessons on there.
yeah, if you get a chance, go to YouTube, and I'm going to try to be putting a lot more videos up on YouTube. I keep sliding out of I never know which way to go, this way or that way, but anyways, be sure and check back next Tuesday for the chickadee birdhouse. This is going to be a fun class and a lot of different techniques. So thank you again for joining me today. Play around with your modeling paste. If you have any questions, send me a message. I'll try to answer. If I can't, I'll see what I can find out for you. And play around with it. Get your palette knife. Don't forget the coupon code is CREATE3. There's 4 2s, 32222. So get the modeling paste and the palette knife set, and you'll get a 25% discount off of the set. So thank you again for joining me, and we'll see you next week at 1 o'clock, same place, same time. Bye-bye.